Hello, everybody. Welcome to another session in the BSc track. Please let me know in the comment section if you can hear me loud and clear, and if you can see my screen as well. Okay, thanks, Mercy. Okay, just to confirm, is there anyone else? Can everyone hear me? Just comment in the comment section. If you can't hear me, just indicate that you cannot hear me. All right. All right, we get started with our section for today. Our session for today. All right, thanks, Adam. Okay. So as at our last class, we were looking at the audio library and some of the charts that we can plot with it. So we said that it's a declarative visualization library for Python that helps you spend less time writing code. So one thing that we said was we emphasized the fact, the declarative nature of it, right? The fact that you don't have to do too much. You just have to call the appropriate methods and all of that and feed it with what you want it to do without having to customize things too much. But what I'm going to be pointing out today, focusing on today, is that it also allows you to create interactive charts. So outside of being declarative visualization library, it helps with creating interactive charts. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. We're still going to be using our data sets from last class. So let's get into it. So one of the things that we're going to be looking at is layering and concatenation of graphs. So before we get right into interactive charts, right, it's important to understand how Alter helps us to layer graphs and how it helps us to concatenate some graphs, right? So first let's do some wrangling with our data, try to get out the data that we need. So first, what is the retailer with the most sales? So let's take a look at our data again. Remember, you have to import everything. Remember, you need to make sure that you have imported everything that you need. I already have all of these things imported. I already have my data sets read and all of that. That's why it's working. If you forget to do that, don't be surprised if you see an error. So yeah, that's it. I know a lot of times, sometimes I think even in the coding session here, I've had a situation where I forgot that I hadn't run that cell and I tried to read in my data. So always ensure that you have imported and read all the files that you need to read to have everything in current session. So we're going to be reading this. Okay, we want to find out what is the retailer with the most sales. One way we can do that is by grouping our data sets by retailer. Okay. So when we group it by retailer, so group by is a pandas operation that allows us to group our data frame by the content of the column that we select. In this case, it's retailer, right? So let's take a look at some of the values inside retailer. We can do the unique function just to see what values we have inside there. And so we see this. So it's going to be grouping this into the various categories, like based on this, right? All of the rows that have Foot Locker as a retailer will be in one group, and so forth and so on and so on. So let's do that. But we don't just want to group, we want to go ahead and get the retailer with the most sales. So that's to say we want to get the sum of the total sales, right? So after grouping, we go ahead and perform an aggregation, which is the total sales. We call that column and then do our aggregation here, which is the sum, right? Okay, what's happening? Oh, sorry. I thought I was using, okay, so doing it here. All right, so we have this. And if we want to know our retailer with the largest sale, we can either arrange it in ascending order, we can decide to, but that'll just give us the value itself as opposed to letting us know which one it is. So I tend to prefer sorting the values. That way I'm able to tell, okay, West Gear has the highest amount of sales. So that answers our first question. Now, what is the most sold product for that retailer? So let's set this to a variable and go ahead and find it out. Let's call that variable West. So we can decide to group by the product and do the same thing to find, what was the question? Total sales, most sold product for that retailer. So most sold products is typically the units sold, right? So the sum of all the units that have been sold for a particular product. So let's do that and get the sum, and I'll just copy this. Okay, so yeah, there's a mistake here. We have gotten the data frame that has the sum of total sales for each retailer. But then what we really want is the data frame of all rows that contain the retailer West Gear, right? So we want to find, now that we know the retailer with the most sales, we want to go ahead and find, okay, the product of that retailer. So this data frame won't work. What we want is to be able to filter the initial data frame by filter for, want to do the retailer. So we're going to have West Gear, and then we'll go ahead and do this. Okay. So now let's have this. I'll come up with names. So let's use the same name that we had previously. All right, now we can go ahead and do what we need to do with our data. So this lets us know that men's street footwear is the most sold product, right? So we can go ahead and now try to understand the sales trend for that product and for that particular retailer. So now we're going to do another pandas operation. We're going to try and filter our data frame for the products that we have found to be. We're going to filter for Westgear, retailer Westgear, and for this product. We want to just narrow down on those variables, right? And see, okay, what's the trend for the highest products by the highest selling retailer, right? So let's do that. So we'll go ahead and set our products to be equal to it's operator when we want to join two conditions. So we'll go ahead and okay, so we have this now, and this has been filtered out for what we want. So let's go ahead and set this to a variable. Let's call it growth. Now let's go ahead and plot a line graph. All that just so we can get to see sales trend. And we know one of the best charts for seeing the trend is a line graph. So let's go ahead and plot a line graph, right? Remember the syntax for plotting graphs. We need to specify our data frame, which we have called growth. And then we specify so now we go ahead and specify our X and Y axis, right? So our X-axis in this case is going to be, we want to look at trends. So we're going to look at the month. Let's look at it on a monthly basis because we currently just have 2 years, 2020. This data set currently covers 2020 and 2021. So let's look at it. If we plot just the years, the 2 years, it look very weird. So let's look at it on a monthly basis. So we can see the full trend, right? So one way we can do that is by specifying the aggregate month and then specifying the dates column. So if you look at your data set here, you're going to see that we have a date column with our years here. So we can go ahead and I could use this, but I just want to show you how you can use the aggregation that Alter provides. So you can go ahead and specify this. And then for our y-axis, we're looking at the total sales, right? So we can go ahead and do the sum of total sales. Now look at this is what we have, but this is not specific to any year. So we want to compare 2020 and 2021, and we can include another encoding, which is like the color. Go ahead and include that and then tie it to the year, right? So go ahead and say it should be year. And now we see what we have, but it thinks, oh, okay, this is a continuous data. That's why it's giving us this continuous coloring that goes in like this, right? So, but we can specify that it's really not. Oh, right, sorry, should be nominal, actually. So we specify that it's not continuous and it's rather nominal. And so we have two clear colors for our charts, right? So this is how we can plot a line graph to show us the growth trend of our data. So now, but this is like looking pretty boring now. We want to use this, well, I demonstrated how we can plot a line graph. We want to use this to show how we can layer graphs on top of the other. So let's take this and make it a dot plot, right? Or yeah, let's use the mark circle or the mark dot with this. So instead of mark line, we can go ahead and use mark circle and see what we have, right? If we want, we can increase the sizing of this to maybe 100, just to see. Okay, so this looks a lot better. So this on its own doesn't really make any sense. We want to pinpoint the various points, the various months. We want to pinpoint them, and so that's what we do. We layer this on top of the other. And one way we can do that is to use the method, the alt layer method, that would allow us to pick this and put them together. So first we have to declare this to a variable, right? Let's call this a line, and let's call this a second. And then we layer this line and this second. And this is what we get to see, right? So now there are other things that we can do to improve this graph, right? We can, this is one way to do it. Another way to do it is to use the plus sign. All right, we get the same thing. So another way to do it is also we can reduce repetition by using base charts. So if you take a look at this, you see they are referencing the same X and Y axis. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to just be repeating it. So we can simply use a base chart that would allow us, let's just copy what we already have. So, okay. So now we'll just remove the mark line, right? Now, this is the base with all of the configurations that we need, the encodings to the X and Y axis. All we now need to do is to use the appropriate charts, right? Base the appropriate charts off of this base that we have, so that we use the mark line and it inherits everything from here. So we're just going to do that. Call it base dot mark line. Let's see what we have. See that we have the graph exactly the way we expected, right? So we can go ahead and just do this. Yeah, you see that this is what we have. So this is another way to do it. What other thing can we do? We can use tooltip to display average operating profit and total sales info for each data point. So what is this about? This is about like I don't want to have to keep going to the y-axis to try and read my data. I want to maybe when I come here, I want to be able to see the various data points. I want to know what data points we're talking about here. So one way to do that is to use tooltip, right? I'll do it here. I'll copy this. Let's do this for here. Copy this. So I can decide. Let's just start with the sum of total sales, right? Oh, okay. I already have it assigned to a variable, so it's not going to, yeah. So now if I come here, I can see, okay, so this is not just above 2000, 2,000,005, yeah, whatever this number is. So this is not just above this, right? This is the exact number, right? This is the exact number, and this is the exact number. So yeah, we can see that. So what we want to integrate it into our this graph, right? We can go ahead and just do this, copy our we come around here, we see the various data points, right? Now let's say this is not informative enough, doesn't provide enough information. We want to expand this, we can do that. We can expand the values that we have here. We can use the alt tooltip objects, right? Rather than just specifying the column, we can actually use, just like we do with our x-axis where we use the x object itself and the y object. So we can do that instead of just specifying the columns to these parameters. So those type of things allow us to customize our configuration some more. Okay. So in this case, it's going to be a list of however plenty you want it, whatever number of information you want to put there, right? So let's see. We want to use sum of total sales. We also, here we said total sales info as well as average operating profit. So let's do that. So total sales. Not sure what's wrong with the wrong spelling. And then I'll go ahead with this. Okay, operating profit. So let's go ahead and do that. So if we come here, we have this. it forms the name it wants to give us on its own. In case you've not noticed, with our x-axis, with our y-axis, we tend to have the author library generate a name for us. So the same thing is happening here. So, but we can specify the names that we want because that is not looking nice. So we can specify the title. We can say sales. Let's say just be sales. And let this be probably average OP, right? So when we come here, we see it's looking a lot better, right? So these are some of the things that Auto Library allows us to do. So now let's move on to interactivity, right? So some of the ways that we can introduce interactiveness into our chats. The first one is by using interval selection. So I'm working with a scatter plot that we already used in our last lesson, if you remember. If you were part of that class last week where we plotted the scatter plots, right? Yeah, it's already interactive to some level. But I didn't show you this, so we'll go ahead and show you how that works. So I have this here. Okay, so let me just briefly explain what's happening here. I'm filtering for retailers, the retailer Foot Locker in the region Northeast, right? So that's basically what's happening here using the same approach I used earlier. So now I also have tooltip here giving me the price per unit. So that's what's happening here as well. But I want to be able to zoom in and zoom out and all of that. So it gives me this interactive method that I can call, and it would allow me to be able to zoom in and zoom out. So I can now zoom in, I can zoom in a lot more, right? Look at some data points, look at some other data points. So yeah, so these are some of the really cool features. This is one of the simplest form of interactiveness that it affords us, right? So, but it's rather, oh, I think I've expanded my screen. Okay, so it's very simplistic and does not really do much for us, right? Very simplistic, doesn't do a lot for us. So we are better off trying to use some other, can zoom out, zoom in as far as much as you want. But even at that, it's not doing a lot. So let's try some other approaches to integrating interactiveness. So we'll use selection interval. So we'll just copy this chart without the interactive method. First things first, we need to define the interval. So we do that by calling selection interval. Okay. So now the next thing we need to do is we need to add it to our charts, right? We add it to our charts by using the add selection method, and then we specify the interval. So when we run this, we can select this expand it, move it, right, on the left, on the y-axis, any direction we want to, right? But then there's a lot more. This is, again, very basic. There's a lot more that we can do with this. So let's go ahead and try. We can also even limit it, limit the axis that we want it to be on. So by specifying encoding, okay, already encoding. So yeah, this is now limited to the x-axis, right? We can only slide this through the x-axis, can't slide it on the y-axis anymore like before. If we switch it up to the y-axis, then we're going to see the same thing, right? So, but then this is just all part of a bigger process because on its own, this doesn't do much for us. So we can add a condition. Next thing we do is we use the alt condition to add conditions to the selected intervals. So we'll copy what we have again. We don't want the encodings this time around. I want to add a condition. So instead of explicitly calling our color, right, color encoding, let's define it with this alt condition. And now we're going to, the first object that it takes, first parameter that it takes rather, is the interval. And then the next thing that it takes is the value that should be applied. So remember, we are our colors are based on categories. And in this case, it was based on, let's see, it was based on the product category. So we're still going to maintain that, okay, if we select an interval, apply the color coding based on products. That's what the second value is about. So when we select an interval, apply this based on products. Yeah, this should be a string. Sorry about that. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to now tell it, okay, if it's not an interval that we have selected, what then should we do? So we'll go ahead and use, let's see, light gray. So what's happening here is when we select this, every other part is grayed out so that our emphasis is now on this. So you can see what's going on here, right? Select this, move this, then you notice that every other part is grayed out. So that's one of the ways, that's how this whole thing works, right? So the next thing we can do is, if you notice, when we run this, everything appears in its usual color, right? In the appropriate color based on the product before we select. So, but like, let's say we want to alter this behavior. We want everything to be grayed out until we select. We can do that by using the empty parameter. So like we see here, everything is grayed out. when we go ahead and select, we see that, okay, so we have focused on a particular region. Now, we can do some more stuff. We can view the count of products in a selected area as well as the average price per unit. So we can tie this to another chart that allows us to see, okay, if I select this area, I don't just want to be selecting for fun. I want a chart that will show me, okay, what's the average price, what's the count of products in this region, how many products, give me the different product counts in that region, as well as, let's say, the average price per unit of the products in that region. So what we are going to do here is we're going to include another chart, right? This time around, let's use a bar chart. Okay. Oh, excuse me. Okay. I'll just copy this. I don't want to use this anymore. Okay, let's do this down here, sorry. Just to make it a little bit more clean. Okay. So I'm looking at count of products in a selected area. So just the way I typically, let's just start out with the bar chart, right? So the bar chart is going to be, let's see, count of products. I have two charts I want to plot. Two bar charts, count of products in a selected area, as well as the average price per unit. Okay. So for my x-axis, let's start with the x-axis is going to be product. Then I should specify product here as well. Then for my y-axis is going to be, so here I don't want this. Neither do I want this. Okay, no one. Okay, for this is for the first one, count of products in a selected area. For the second one, average price per unit. So same, our y-axis can be the mean of the price. And our x-axis is going to be the product. Yeah, what's happening is that we have not specified that we want all of them to be concatenated. So we have to do that. Specified names you want to give this, probably dot plots, scatter plots, right? Then let's call this our bar one. Let's call this our bar two. Let's place them side by side. So we have this like this, but it doesn't really look very good. I would suggest that we make this the x-axis and let's switch the axis, right? Let's switch the axis. So let's do this. Okay. So still not giving what we want. So we can bring this down by using the and operator so that we have this. Okay. So this is what we have. This tells us, okay, this is the um this is the product count. We might need to specify the title at this point. So let's use properties so that we are not confusing the title of the various plots. So this is product count. Well, this is average price, average unit price. Oh, okay. So this should be here. Okay, sorry, my notebook has disconnected a bit. So okay. So now this is giving us the product count of everything, and this is as well giving us the transform. This is giving us the average unit price as well. But let's say that we want to, remember, we still want a situation where if we pick this, we want to be able to see what this looks like on both of these ends. So we can do that by simply saying, using the transform filter that would tie these bars to the interval that we have selected. So one way that we're going to do that is on what we see happening is that we see the different increments. If I go up to somewhere that doesn't have anything, we see which ones. But I would also like the color to be the same. So I would just specify the color here to the product so that it would match color in the product color encoding here. So that's what I'll do here as well. So it's easier to match the colors to the product. So this is one of the easiest feature that Alter gives us with very minimal stuff to do. We can easily view, okay, so for this point, for this area that I have selected, where operating margin is somewhere between, let's say 5 and 30. This is the highest product in that region, right? The women's apparel. And the average price for the women's apparel, right, is 65 thereabout. We don't haven't confirmed the unit this is in, the unit the pricing unit this is in. But this helps you to do this. And I think this is one of the very interesting features of Alter. So there's also like some other interactive features that we can incorporate into our chat. And one of it is the single selection. So I'll just copy this. Still stick with our scatter plot this time around. So what's happening here is when I click a data point, everything else is grayed out, right? I can click a data point and everything else is grayed out. So it allows me to focus on a particular data point, okay? So like, I also have another feature as well, which is the multi-selection feature. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening. It's supposed to allow us to select multiple data points at once. But let's see some additional features that we can add to the selections. We can decide, okay, like if we want it to be on maybe when our mouse hovers around, so we can, that way we specify and then, okay, let's try this. Let's just try this and see. So I'm not clicking this like unlike before when I ran this. I had to literally click on a point. My mouse is just hovering over this and it's getting selected, right? So let me set the empty to 4. because I want us to see something. Mm, okay. All right. So if we look at this, you notice that if I'm kind of close to it, but because my mouse is not hovering over it, it doesn't get selected. But one thing that we can do is we can make nearest true so that if I'm even within the region, right, it gets selected. So these are some of the features that let's try the same. Multi-selection allows us to utilize the same parameters. So let's try this. Okay. So I'll be sharing this notebook with you guys and I'll fix the issue with this and if I share it with you so that when you try it on your end, it's much better. Okay, so one more thing I want to talk about is customizing your visualizations. So there are several ways that we can customize the visualizations. And if you go to the documentation, the user guide, you'll see how you can adjust the title. I did that using the properties method, but there are other ways you can do it. You can specify directly in the chat object you're seeing here. You can also specify like where you want it to be. When you specify, you can specify it here alongside the subtitle. You can specify where you want it to be. This allows you to specify orientation, right? Um, and offset allows you like to specify at whether you want it up here, you want it below. You can specify your axis limits as well. Just take a look at this. Now that you know how to generate all the different charts, you can go ahead. Yeah, this one is an interactive chart so that we can play around with it. You can go ahead and explore some of the things here to adjust your chart to the way that you would like to have it presented. Another thing too I'd like to point out is saving your alter chart. One thing I didn't mention is that we get to view, we can see like how when we generate our chart, when we specify the various configurations and all that, we can now see, okay, what it looks like in a JSON file. Okay, so this is what you can save the chart to a JSON file. You can also save it as an HTML yeah, format, right? You can also save it as an image, so as a PDF. So as you try to get familiar and get better at using generating charts with Altair, please don't stay away from the documentation. Documentation will help you to do a lot of things. So I'll be stopping here for today. Thank you to everyone who joined us. I wish I can we have any questions from anybody?
Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Okay, thank you very much for today's class. So I wanted to ask that, is it like a compulsory thing for us to like use for the and use for that library, like our seaborn lovely and math lovely.
Okay, no, it's not compulsory. It's just CBON doesn't offer like interactiveness. And for this course, we're not covering plotly. So if you want to go ahead and learn it, that'll be good. To be honest, it's a lot more popular than Alter. So, but I thought this was really easy to use. And so for a lot of people that are like just getting started, you might find learning curve with it a lot easier than plotly. So yeah. But it's not compulsory. But it makes sense to know a bit of everything. I
Okay.
hope that
Thank you
helps.
very much.
All right, thank
Yes,
you.
yes, yes.
Okay, all right. So thank you everybody for being a part of today's class. We concluded the lesson on Alter. In our next class, we're going to take a look at Power BI. So please, looking forward to seeing you guys. Thank you, everyone, and bye.